is going to be, we're going to start being more interactive, a little bit more fun, relaxed. I learned from a very smart individual a couple years ago that you have to hear something 23 times before it really sinks in. It's kind of like forming a habit, right? You just got to hear it 23 times. So I know a lot of you have at least seen this briefing 4 times if you were on a mission last year. So you would have seen it during the workshop and then at every planning meeting, maybe a 5th time at your Right Start brief. Maybe more if you came to other activities that we did. So you're still not even at your 23 times. So I don't feel bad for you today for sitting through it again. But this is important. It's going to give you some background, right? And just a better understanding at a higher level to prep you for tomorrow. Because tomorrow we're going to go into this deep dive where you're going to get into the nitty-gritty of the planning details of a project. Now, that's not to say that you haven't ran projects before. That's great. Perhaps you've planned large exercises. That's great too. But what I can also tell you in the 4 years that I've been doing this, no 2 projects have been even remotely the same. The basics are always the same, but there's a lot of details within each of them that change and are different. It's a different mixture of personnel and people and service components. You're going to have different experts come to the table throughout the planning process. You're going to have good idea fairies come to the table throughout the planning process. So we're also here to help you kind of weed out some of the rabbit holes and just understand the basics at the highest level, and then we'll kind of take you into that planning piece. So this is the IRT 101 session. Now, last year, Major DeVoe, where are you, Major DeVoe? He taught this session with me, and it was really, really great. No pressure, Major McDonald, okay? Major DeVoe is also a comedian in his other life. I'm not sure which life that is, but one life. You'll get his comedic stylings at some point over the next couple days, I'm sure. So, Major McDonald, you have to be the comedian because I'm not nearly as funny as you all.
Oh, Lord, that's easy.
Major McDonald, he tends to be a little bit more redneck comedian, if you just a heads up, so please don't get offended.
Just because I speak from the South, I do talk fast, so everybody just slow me down if I go too quick. And I do have a Southern drawl. I'm so sorry.
Very charming.
But I won't sit here like this all day and talk to y'all, okay?
Snap. All right. Why don't we begin from there? Okay, so like I said, these are the 101 slides. You're going to see this many, many times. So what if the best military training led to ready forces and a thriving community? You saw this a little bit in the video. This is exactly what the IRT program is, right? So we're taking a community need, which is the first step of any IRT. The community has to do a written request for assistance. We also call it a community application. And then the military, different service components, different units, determine what their training requirements are, and they match it to a community application. You're going to hear that many, many, many times because I'm going to try to get that in 23 times prior to ending this session. All right, so this program was actually established as part of the Rebuild America initiative in 1992. So yes, if you do the math, that's almost 3 decades that this program has been around. Now, one of the questions I get most of the time is, Jen, if it's been around for 30 years, I've been in for 25. How on earth did I not know anything about it? Sergeant Hong, do I need to talk to you about that? I can't do this. Okay, so 30 years, haven't heard about it. The reason is because this program has truly ebbed and flowed over 30 years, okay? So the past 3 to 4 years, it's really taken off as more of a primary support unit training opportunity. But before, it was just kind of onesies, twosies here and there. So the program has grown expansively over the past probably 5 years, 5 to 6 years.
And
Mitch
it really
is
took off about 17 months ago when I got here.
Yeah.
Throw that in there a little bit for you.
Yeah. Mitch is shaking his head because he's been around all 15 years that it's expanded, right, Mitch?
There's the chief.
Oh, and Chief Jones. Yeah, you've been around for longer than that. So the program is authorized.
He's
I'm
not.
I'm on a roll
He
today.
didn't bring his walker today. Okay, it's okay. We're good with this.
So the Rebuild America Act created a law, right? Everything's embedded in law, which is 10 U.S.C. 2012. So our highest level is the law, 10 U.S.C. 2012. So most of the answers I give on a daily basis, I usually can point back to this 2-page law. Everything in the community application, okay, not everything, most everything in the community application, most everything in the military service application, and the after action report all stem from this law. So you'll hear me go, no, hey, that sounds really illegal to me, usually because it is, okay? So this isn't like Jen just kind of having fun going, hey, I don't think we should do it that way. I'll usually tell you like, hey, no, that's law. We need to stick to that, okay? So that's also why we're at OSD. The program is still managed at OSD. I don't know if most of you know this, but the Office of the Secretary of Defense is primarily policy makers, right? So usually people are confused when you see OSD actually running a program and filtering money through it. It's just because there's community engagement, civil military engagement, and of course the law that requires it. Okay, any questions? Okay, we'll talk about that a little bit more. The Department of Defense directive is what was established from the law to run the program. However, we are so close to getting this new DoD published, which is a DoD instruction, which is going to be a lot more specific than the DoD directive is. Initially I think I had on the slide that it was published date was going to be February of 2019. You can see it's not done yet, so wishful thinking. But it will be done very soon. So we're really looking forward to that because that helps us continue to move forward. And passing a DoD is no easy feat. John Kinsler's not in the room, but we owe a huge thanks to him as he helps us get through that process. Then, of course, we have military service instructions and policies, and then 32 USC code for the Army and Air National Guard. Anything from Major McDonald today?
No, I got it.
No.
What's those in the corner there? What are we talking about?
You know what? Why don't you tell them what those are?
Are those the non-for-profit or not-for-profit?
Well, they're the top 12,
Do we do
13.
humanitarian stuff too? Just wanted to mess with you, keep you on your toes a little bit today. So everything we do is at no cost. So as we go through things, even the coffee this morning is not free. It's at no cost. Got it, Major? So no, I don't really have anything other than the fact. So those emblems are down there for a particular reason because those are examples of not-for-profit or nonprofit organizations.
Mm-hmm. Those are the big 13. So eligible organizations. The law states that you have to be an eligible organization in order to, as a community member, to request assistance. So an eligible organization, these guys are automatic. So Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, the top 12, you kind of hear that. And if any of you are card holders or you're contractors, and we hear that we can contract with them without having extra hoops, right? So same thing, we can partner with them without going through extra hoops. Local government agencies we can partner with. All others have to be approved by the Secretary of Defense. So we have a process for that, which is called the organizational eligibility process. But that, thankfully to all of you and all the missions in this room, has already been done. So by the time you hit this room, which we'll go through the timeline, those pieces of the application are already done. But it's very important for you to know what has happened up until this point. So restrictions, by law restrictions. This is straight out of the law. And I know you can talk about this one, Major McDonald.
Oh, I got to do this one. Okay. So I'm not going to read them all to you, but we know that these have to take place within the United States or within some of our territories. So we must accomplish mission essential military training. So it's not always about the community. It's truly about the training that you guys are going to get while you're there, the interactions you're going to have with the other services in a non-contingent environment. So in saying that, does anybody have a question on what we mean by that? None? Zero?
Easy. They know everything. There's going to be a quiz at the end of this. I hope y'all know.
Are you going to give it to them?
Yeah.
All right, then.
So the natural or man-made disasters, this has oddly enough come up multiple times, but probably our best example would be in Hawaii last year. We were doing Tropicare, Maui, Molokai, Lanai. Not last year, as in 2019, but 2018. And we had a hurricane come in, and it was supposed to hit day one of troops on the ground, so we had to push it back a couple days. And then we had a hurricane come at the end of the mission, too. So, of course, one of the biggest questions, we had like 250 personnel, 6 service components there. The first question is, well, can we just have these guys respond, right? I mean, there's a hurricane, we have all these military troops. Can they just respond to the disaster? Well, short answer, no. Long answer, yes, if the home unit commander converts their authority out of a training status into a Title X status of response and blah, 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 blah. We could go down that list. But honestly, at the end of the day, it's way more complicated than just to get you out. So you'll be evacuating with everyone else in your training status.
There's the other two important are the non-compete, the two in red, not compete. So we can't take monies away from the local community. So if there's contractors there, they have to tell them, hey, we're going to be doing these services here. Is it going to affect the way, your well-being? Is it going to affect your income for your home? So that's one of the other things. And also cannot provide law enforcement. We're not allowed to carry weapons. We're not allowed to be doing those things. So some of the areas in which we do go, we have local law enforcement that do perimeters, and they check, make sure everything's going well, because there's at times that things get stolen from us. So those are the two things that we don't have to deal with.
Stolen? What do you mean? How many times did that happen this year?
Twice.
Twice.
Yep. So we're helping communities, and they're helping themselves sometimes. So, but I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. We're either going to break equipment, or it's going to get lost, or get stolen. But we just have to keep up with it, and so that is kind of an important issue. Make sure you take care of your stuff when you're out in these areas, and keep an eye out.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. The only other one we're going to touch on here is military members only doing tasks within their military occupational specialty. I know that seems pretty obvious, but it happens often. So I'm going to give you a couple examples. One, think of a flight surgeon. So a flight surgeon in their military occupational specialty is a general practitioner, right? And specializes in, obviously, our pilots. But we don't have pilots on IRT missions. So that means they need to be general. Now, if you have a flight surgeon that's a dermatologist, say, in his civilian practice, well, yeah, he's a trained dermatologist, but that's not what we pay him for in the military. So in the military, on a military training mission, which this is a military training mission, he or she should not be practicing dermatology on the community, right? Does that make sense? It actually happens most of the missions. Another good example, I'm going to stay on medical for a minute, is our dental hygienists or dental technicians. We have dental technicians. Some service components have hygienists. Some service components have technicians that start doing some perio work or a little bit extra. As long as it's in their training record, they can do it on an IRT mission. If it is not in their training record, they cannot do it on a mission, right? And that goes back to, again, the law, Federal Tort Claim Act, etc. Okay, so for engineering, when we're out in the field on engineering missions, we're operating under the community's licenses and permits. So obviously, if you're an electrician doing structures work, there's a little bit more wiggle room than providing patient care, right? So you can still cross-train, but just be aware that you really need to be focusing on what's in your military training record, and we need to be able to explain it as military training. Does that make sense? All right. All of the law. Okay, all right, law. All right, so what do you do with any program that you're running in the military, right? You take your boss's strategy and priorities, and you adopt them and determine how you're going to execute them, right? So when your commander comes to you and goes, hey, these are my 3 priorities, now you've got to figure out how in your world you're going to meet those priorities. So what do? We took the Secretary of Defense's National Defense Strategy. We took his top 3 priorities, which are readiness, partnerships, and bringing business reform to the Department of Defense, and then we molded them into our Innovative Readiness Training Strategy, right, to make sure that we're meeting all those. Readiness is easy, right, because that's exactly what we're doing. We're training all of our military troops. You cannot have an IRT if you're not training, right? That's number one. You must meet a military training need. Number two, attracting new partners. Again, it's almost like they wrote it for us. Pretty easy, right? Because we're partnering with new communities every year, all across the nation and its territories. And then finally, bringing business reform. This is where we use our resources wisely, which again is in accordance with the law for this program. This program, we cannot do a mission that's going to inevitably increase the cost of training. So I'm sure you're asking this question, okay, Jen, if I have a unit in Wisconsin that's going over to Hawaii to build a STEM lodge, how is that not significantly increasing the cost of training? Well, let me tell you, because all the planning is going to be paid for by OSD, right? That's what this program is for. We're going to pay for the planning, and then we're also going to pay for the setup, and we're going to do a mass bed down, we're going to do mass feeding, and believe it or not, we can do a lot of these missions at a lower cost than it is for you to do your home station training, because you're still bringing people into your home unit. You still have to pay for their lodging over the weekend or over the week. So we can sometimes do these for actually a cheaper amount of money. So does that make sense? So that's how we avoid the significant increase to the cost of training. Now, if you come back and you go, hey, well, you know, we're going to do Camp Pamalu. I'm only using you as an excuse. You would never do this, Lieutenant Brooks. I know you wouldn't. But we'll say Camp Pamalu, the Girl Scout camp in Hawaii on Oahu. If you come back during the planning process and you go, you know what, we're not going to do this mass bed down thing. We're just going to go ahead and stay at the Marriott. They gave us a really good price at $325 per person per night. And, you know, it just makes sense. They're going to give us breakfast with that. I mean, come on. That $6 breakfast, that's going to go a long way, okay? That is likely not going to meet that requirement of not significantly increasing the cost of training, right? So those are those lines. That's why you have program managers. That's why you have project managers. That's why we have this workshop. So we can make sure that you guys fully understand why it is that we're doing everything that we're going to do over the next 9 months. That makes sense? Okay. Anything out of it?
Yeah, and saying that, so what we're talking about when we talk about enhancing or costing more, we give you a letter of intent, and you know exactly what you're going to be doing when you get boots on ground, where you're going to be staying, where you're going to be eating, and those things. It's not up to you as a commander, if you are a commander coming in, to say where your folks are going to be staying. You stay where we ask you to stay or tell you to stay. We feed you there. So you have to stay within the constraints of what we give you guys. And that's very important because it happens several times this year. So that is a keynote. You stay where we're at, and we don't stay outside of those perimeters.
But you're going to love it no matter what. At the end of it, you're still going to love it, okay?
Yeah. That's where a lot of stuff happens. I mean, if you separate everybody, you're all spread out. You don't get to have that camaraderie. You don't get to learn the other things from me when you come back at night and do things.
All right. Okay, so just as a visual, consider these more dotted lines than straight lines, right? Because it's not an official chain of command. But you have Colonel Scott, the director, myself and Captain Machado sitting at OSD, Office of the Secretary of Defense. And then you have what we call department responsible officials. These department responsible officials, we don't have any of them here today, but there's 3 of them at Secretary of the Air Force, Secretary of the Navy, Secretary of the Army. And they have to approve the entire Air Force plan, meaning Air National Guard and Air Force Reserve, and active if they're participating. Secretary of the Army has to do Army Guard, Army Reserve, and active. And then Secretary of Navy, Marine Corps, and Navy, right? So although they have a portfolio of 11 different programs, they still have to be the ones to approve the entire portfolio for that, and especially the funds that go through it. So they approve the applications, they approve the after-action reports. They're the ones that OSD will have to go through, especially if anything's going wrong, right? Try to handle it with the program managers, but sometimes there's things that just have to go through there. So very high level, high visibility training program, but only to your benefit, right? Because these are also the same people that come out to DB days and see all the awesome work that you're doing out there. So we have a lot of opportunity to shine as well. Then that next shaded area is where the service responsible officer officials, sorry, we just changed that, and the program managers sit. So you might be wondering why you only met 6 program managers, but I have 9 slots up there. Well, primarily because this is a Guard and Reserve program, right? So we do have a lot of active units participate in different capacities, though. However, just not enough at this point to warrant a full-time program manager that we would pay for. So usually Air Force Reserve or Air Guard or Army Reserve or Navy Reserve, they'll help the active component. Marine Corps helps the active component as well. And then their service responsible officials are the program managers, direct supervisors. Any questions on how that rolls? Easy. Okay. So we discussed extensive training opportunities in the FY20 project mission slides, but civil engineering, you're primarily looking at horizontal and vertical, but we get all sorts of new requests, well drilling. Shout some out. I know you guys got some interesting things this year. Bridges, we got bridges requests, culverts, all sorts of land clearing, you name it. It definitely spread across the range of engineering requests. Medical, same thing. We've actually done podiatry on a mission because we had the Navy needed to train some of the podiatrists. So there's a lot of opportunities outside of the basic medical, smorgasbord that we have there, but it's all based on special requests and military training need, of course. And then, of course, other, which I say other, but, don't let that fool you, because what you're going to learn over the next couple days and what you're going to learn over the next year is that you don't necessarily need a doctor to help you set up a medical mission or an engineer to help you set up an engineering mission, because it is 90% logistics that you'll be working on as a planner, right? I see a lot of head nods, right, of our mission OICs and NCOICs from last year. It's primarily logistics. I call myself a logistics officer now because I pretty much figured out logistics. I'm also a resource advisor, apparently, because I've had to figure out money really well. I'm practically a contracting officer, even though I don't have the warrant for it. But you find that you're going to learn across the board. Force support, how much have we had to learn about force support over the last couple of years? Transportation, I'm really not into that part, but that's what we have the Air Force Reserve for. They're pretty good at that.
Wow.
Anything to add to this one?
The Guard's also well at it. They help, but they only want to help themselves.
I'm in the Air National Guard.
Just want to mess with it a little bit.
That's
No,
why he said that.
for sure. We just can't put all FSCs up there, but you can almost place any of them into most of these contingent environments or non-contingent environments. Even the cops could participate. They just wouldn't be able to carry their weapons. They can still do some of their medals and those things as well. So there are opportunities out there for everyone. Again, it's about what your imagination lets you do.
Mm-hmm. And the cyber piece, I didn't touch on that as much earlier, but the cyber part is specifically we're looking at establishing or finding vulnerabilities in local agencies. So we've received a few applications now partnered with state emergency operations centers just to our cyber unit training, but also assisting in finding the vulnerabilities. So if anything does happen, not only do they already have that local partnership and they know who to talk to, but they're also able to help them beef it up because it's inevitably going to affect the Guard, Reserve, and active component that's local. So I become a cyber expert as well. You'll figure it all out very soon. All right, so civil military excellence. It all starts with, who's been paying attention actually? We're going to throw this one out to the audience. I won't even pick on anybody yet. So every IRT starts with a community application, yes, and no PMs. I don't think any of you said that. And no major pagan either. You know this like the back of your hand too. Everything starts with a request for services and support, right? So then the next step is it has to meet a
Training needs.
Stop answering for them. Military training need, right? So that's all through a military service application. So how is this a partnership, right? we can't do this without the community, and the community can't do this without us, right? Well, they can, but for a lot more money, right? To a point. So we are bringing the personnel, right? The supplies, not building materials, but supplies, equipment for the most part, or we're contracting it. But what does the community need to bring? And we'll get even more into this as we continue on. But the community should have the volunteers, the building materials, the venue. We ask them to help us find locations for mass bed down, kitchens for mass feeding. If we can't get a DRMKT, sometimes we're in remote locations, like in Alaska. So sometimes we need them to tell us what barge to barge our food in on, because there's only one that comes every 5 months. Sorry, okay, a little bit of an exaggeration, but Captain White can explain that one a little bit more. But those are the things we need from the community. They know their community better than we do, right? So we need to make sure that we're really partnering with them and setting expectations appropriately. And then obviously the results are our priorities for IRT, readiness, partnerships, and innovation. The timeline. All right, you're going to, oh, hello. All right.
I told you not to push that button.
I know. I don't know what I did.
I think, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to talk to the timeline because I know it by heart anyway. All right, or I'll wait. That's cool. Okay, so the timeline. So obviously we start with the community application. So that little purple glowy box, yes, Major Devo, I still call it a glowy box, and I will not change what I call it. The purple glowy box is where you are today in the timeline. So you can see there's been a lot that has happened already with the projects that you're here for today, okay? The community has already applied. The military unit or headquarters level has already applied. And then they already selected the units, if you weren't the unit that applied, to do this. And the mission OICs have pretty much already been selected and the units participating. So we've crossed a lot of different thresholds. September 30th this month, community applications are due for a project in fiscal year 2021. Did I say that right? Thanks, I knew you were going to make sure. So you can see this is a long timeline, and this is only for OSD funded missions, okay? So non-OSD funded missions can have a shorter timeline, obviously because you're not requesting funding, right? And you're using your training funding that you already have at your unit level for a non-OSD funded mission. And you wouldn't be doing a non-OSD funded mission if you didn't have the training funds already at your unit level, right? So those have a little bit different timeline, and if you're interested in that, we can talk. But you here are today, you are here today because you are part of an OSD funded mission, which is why we're doing this part. So the OSD funded missions can take up to 2 years from beginning application to execution in the end. And why is that? Because of funding, right? Because we need to establish the request, figure out the funding piece, move forward, then we can start the planning piece. But if we wanted to execute it right away, I mean, you guys, there's no way we can plan that fast enough, right? And you'll need all the time you can get for planning purposes, especially when you're bringing joint service components, contracts, etc., right? So you'll see this timeline a lot throughout this. Did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, only in the end. So project completed. That doesn't mean that project's complete. That means we're done with it, because with the CE missions that we do, at the end of that project, we're moving on. There will be a general contractor or somebody that's there with the licenses and all. They'll continue that service if that project's not complete. Or we'll do a multi-year project. They've already put the packages in. We've approved it. We're going to do it again the following year. So just at the end, it's not always project complete, but it is for us at that time. So if we understand.
Perfect. Okay, so this is where we were in 2019. As you can see, all over the place. And this is just a reference so you can see how your year compares to last year. Some of you are repeating as mission OICs. So you can either compete with yourselves or compete with all those other yahoos that did FY19 missions to make this the best IRT year ever. But one thing that we are really striving to do in the program is to expand the communities that we go in. A lot of a lot of years we're getting repeat applications, which is good for some engineering projects, right? We want 2, 3, 4-year projects because it helps us train our folks better. I just said folks. Yeah. However, we do want to make sure that we can impact more communities. When you go back to, the same place in Hawaii, every time the community already starts to figure it out, so we're not having the same logistical planning pieces that we would normally want in an island environment. So we're trying to expand the community applications as we speak. All right, why do we do this?
Why? To bolster readiness. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that you guys are ready when you have to actually go down range and be in a contingent environment. So it offers leadership opportunities, OICs, NCOICs. It allows you to interact with the other services. It gives you job satisfaction. And it was Major Strebeck, or Lieutenant Commander Strebeck, also hit on that when he said it acts as a retention tool. People actually get re-energized. They want to do this because it actually is helping other folks within the United States. Again, it gets back to real versus simulated. We know at our units, we may build something that day or through the weekend, and we tear it down at the end of the day or at the end of the weekend when we're doing our drills and things. Out here, we're building stuff that's going to be adding to the communities. They're going to be something they're going to be able to use for years, and it's something that you actually put your hands on and done. And another thing it also does with the readiness, it gets us ready, but it also gets the communities ready. They also want something out of this in the end, such as the hospitals, or as we're doing in Camp Kamasa down there, we're building something that we're giving back to children and adults with disabilities, something that they don't already have there. So they're getting some skills out of this. But so it's not always about us. It is in the beginning. We need to do the training. We need to make sure everybody's up to date and current. And we're also trying to add a couple of other things so we can get commanders involved. We want to add other training. So that's also something you can bring to us as you see needs that you have within your organization you're not meeting. We're trying to get that added to this as we go through the readiness training portions.
All right, we're going to hear from the audience for a minute. Mitch Sisko, why do you continue to come back every single year?
I enjoy helping out the communities, and I like to be able to spread IRT's mission to different units and branches, because 60% of the people that come on these projects have never heard of IRT. Even people that have been in for 17, 20, 25 years sometimes have never heard of IRT, and I just love the type of training that we can get, and I love to be able to help all the community partners that we interact with.
Thank you. Lieutenant Brooks, why on earth after last year do you really want to come back this year?
I learned so much. I am one of those junior officers, and I learned so much about the whole military process, again, logistics, from start to finish. But then also, I got to work with the Girl Scouts, and this is really one of those things in the military that you don't know really exists, that you should go out in your community, help the community, interact with them, and just know who you're serving. And it was just that esprit de corps and job satisfaction. It was amazing.
Captain White, I think we possibly gave you some gray hair last year. Why were you just chomping at the bit to come back again this year?
I absolutely loved it. People don't know, we were in the middle of remote Alaska doing a really logistical, nightmarish project. As a traditional guardsman, I don't get to do that very often, and most of our guys have never even been to Alaska. So we got to experience a true integration into a new community and helping them out. That was really tangible to the guys on the ground. Also, it gave me great leadership opportunity. I've never worked joint service. I haven't been deployed. A whole bunch of different things that I got to actually experience on the ground. And I'm excited to keep working at that and keep growing my skills as a officer.
Awesome. All right, I've got one more, switching service components here. Captain Brooks, as a unit commander, not only did you hunt me down a couple years ago to do this, but you just keep coming back. So we would be remiss not to ask you why you keep coming back.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to speak, Captain Ryan, and I will turn to my direct quote in Citizen Soldier magazine. Captain Brooks.
No big deal. But he's kind of a big deal.
Right.
Sorry. All right, go ahead.
I'll sign anybody's digital copy if they want later. Basically, I just said it's why we join, giving back to the community, being part of the solution. It feels good to actually get out and do your job and have its benefits. I was joint service. I'm probably one of the most joint service people in the room. I was 13 years Air Guard and now 8-9 years Army Guard. To see things
Went the wrong way.
Sorry.
Wrong way.
To see things from both sides, or both sides of the house as far as those two services are concerned, is great because in Delaware we're small, and my Air Guard unit is right up the street from where I work for the Army. So to jump into the Savannah mission a couple years ago with both feet and take as many people as I could that year was great. As a unit commander, to be able to take my people away from the flagpole and get them to actually do their jobs for my particular unit. They're probably not going to deploy. We more belong to the state, and we manage the state's medical readiness for the rest of the soldiers in the state. So it's not a glamorous job to do, but to jump on a mission like this is probably one of the more glamorous things that my soldiers will do during their time with me as commander. So from the unit commander's perspective, it's just an outstanding training opportunity from the medical. And I've spoken with civil engineers. It sounds like they have a great time on their missions as well. So that's all I have.
Thank you. See, I promise I didn't even prep any of them, so I apologize ahead of time, but they're used to me throwing them in the fire a little bit.
Captain Ryan, I think another thing this helps for you guys, our jobs are always going to come up, but we're going to have to move on. So this actually prepares you guys to be moving into program managers positions if you like that. I mean, those opportunities are going to be there as well. So a lot of the folks that you see here have actually been part of it before. They've been part of the missions, and now they're in these positions. So I always look forward to doing something like that. We're not going to stay forever. We can't. We have to move on doing other things. So again, it can prep you guys if you're interested. It's always an open door, and people are looking to get help here.
Absolutely. That's why we hold these, train the bench. All right, so expectations versus reality. So a lot of individuals come into these missions with certain expectations, and they go in just as they do deployment, right? Just as they do in a natural disaster that you're responding to. But we have the exact same issues, believe it or not, as deployment and natural disaster response, so domestic operations. In fact, we have our Deputy CAT Director in the room for the Air National Guard, so he can attest to this. But when we respond to natural disasters, so Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico a couple years ago, one of the biggest issues we had was accountability, which happens in deployment as well. And another big issue was just basic logistics, right? So a good example is a unit wanted to respond, wanted to do great things, wanted to go in. They're like, we've got search and rescue. We can do this. We can do that. So they go, and they don't have a plan to feed their people or bed them down, right? So those are the things that we forget about because we want to go in and do our jobs because we're trained, whether we're a medical professional or an engineer, we're operations, like we want to go in and we know how to do our jobs up, left, right, to the center, and we're trained. We know what we're doing. But what we forget about are those basic logistics of taking care of people, taking care of your military members that are coming in, and the logistics piece of it. So keep that in mind as you're going through this planning process, because that's usually where we have our biggest issues. It's not in knowing the job. We know that our engineers and our medical professionals and our transportation folks, we know that you guys know how to do that part of your job. That's not what this is. This is planning for everything else, okay? So keep that in mind as you embark on this journey over the next couple days and then through the next year. It's a lot more than just what you know, okay? So this is where we have that expectations versus reality. Asset management, it's not going to be perfect. It never will. It never has been. It isn't in deployment. It isn't in a natural disaster, domestic operations response. It just is what it is. However, we continue to make improvements every year, and we're going to continue to make improvements as we go. And thanks to this guy, we've got a lot of new medical equipment and even additional engineering equipment. Yeah, I know. Hold your applause. Some of you that have been on other missions might see the value in that, big time. So huge benefit to that. Huddle, like any change process, who's gone through a recent change in their life? Any change at work, whether it's systems, IT, maybe you got a new phone, maybe you had a new baby, you got married, I don't know, anybody. So just raise your hand if you've had a change in the last 2 months of your life. Okay, you all are lying to me. Come on. Everybody had something that changed in their lives, right? So part of the change process is learning new things, and usually there's frustration in it, okay? So, personal example, I just had to change my name. You would think that I was the first person in the Air Force that ever changed their last name. I lost my portal account. I didn't have my email for a week. I still call myself the wrong name. Everybody else is much better at calling me the right name. But I'm still dealing with it months later, okay? Change. It's frustrating. But there's no going back now. No matter how much I want. No, I'm just kidding. I don't want. Don't tell Jim. Don't tell him that. I love him. Okay, we're going to move on from that. So Huddle is the system of record. Huddle, you're going to have a Huddle 101 brief here today. It's going to be awesome. Huddle's going to be new to you. You just got an invite, probably, I think, from me yesterday, to the workspace. We're starting to build your FY20 workspaces as we speak. It's a file sharing method, and it's absolutely mandatory. And there's a million reasons why Huddle is mandatory for use for all these projects. One, it is not uncommon for OSD, Office of the Secretary of Defense, to get a question from like Undersecretary Penrod or Smith asking about something that's going on your mission, okay? So when I get that question, it would be easiest for me to just jump into Huddle and check your planning documents and what you've last done, instead of me trying to find you through your program manager, through your project manager, then find you where you work, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You get what I'm saying, right? And then that's a whole day to 2 day turnaround, if not a week, because I can't find the information that we should have readily available. So very, very important to use Huddle. It's going to be to your benefit as much as all of our benefits, okay? One file sharing system. DB Day, OSD funded missions, DB Day is mandatory. No, it is not a dog and pony show. Captain Machado will speak to this later. But DB Day is really awesome because it really highlights your individuals. It is not every day that the people on your mission are going to get to meet, you know, an Assistant Secretary of the Air Force or Assistant Secretary of Defense, or General Rice, the Director of the Air National Guard, or
the Vice President.
Or the Vice President of the United States. I forgot about him. He was just in Kentucky. These are huge moments. This might be one of the only moments that your personnel get to see these high caliber individuals. It might be the only time they get coined by one of them. So treat it accordingly and then highlight your stuff. Like, you guys are all going to be working a lot to make these things successful, these missions. And, you know, let it show. Don't treat it like just another day. Like, really embrace the moment that you get to show off all your hard work and effort, okay? All right. Do we compete with the private sector? Actually, should I start picking on people, or what's the time? I got a little bit of time. A little bit of time. All right. Do we? No prior IRTers answering this. Can we compete with the private sector? Oh, good. I got a lot of head shakes. All right. Nobody wants to talk, though. I'm trying to get more talkers out there. No, we cannot compete with the private sector. How do we know we're not competing with the private sector? We only briefly touched on this. We ask them. Okay, part of the community application process, right? So it's part of the advertisements that go out with the community application before they can even turn it in. They have to make that a non-issue before it even comes to our table. All right. Does an IRT have to accomplish mission essential training? This is the easiest one. Resounding. Come on, say it out. Yes, thank you. Can we provide law enforcement? No. And can we respond to natural disasters? No. Long answer, maybe. That's when you only have to use that long answer when the general's asking you, but all right, sir, let me lay it out for you and tell you why you don't want to do it. but that doesn't mean it can't be done. Okay. Any other expectations?
The only one is
reality?
community. So the community expectations versus reality.
And we'll talk about
So
that in life cycles
we will
too.
go deeper into it, but that's something you guys will have to manage when you're there. They have expectations of what you're going to provide for them, especially when we do our CE missions. It's really complicated then, but so it is. The community is you really got to manage those expectations with the community and tell them what you're going to deliver for those guys and tell them what your limitations are.
All right. Finally, you've got some statistics, which last year's personnel will hopefully be seeing a survey in the next couple months, so we can gather updated statistics for FY19, and then hopefully you'll be seeing them for FY22, because it's good to get some of this information as we brief it, especially because sometimes I think we've all been a part of this, where what you think is happening at the top isn't necessarily happening all the way down on the mission execution side of it. So we always want to make the program better. We always want to capture those details, and we want to make sure that it's a reality, right? We're seeing what's really happening out there, so we can make the appropriate decisions moving forward and change processes as we need to change processes. Because at the end of the day, it all matters what you guys go out and do, and that training is complete and the communities are getting what they asked for. Okay, mostly, which we'll talk about that as we go through the next part. So over 116,000 training days. I mean, that's a ton. That's a lot of people and a lot of training days. And over 6,690 members trained. That's in 1 year. That's pretty big for a training program. Even your biggest exercises out there, you know, your vigilant guards, even those joint ones are only training 1,000 to 2,000 usually per exercise. So that's a lot of individuals across all 6 service components.
That also was a slide that they can utilize when they go back to your commanders. So commanders sometimes are resistant to letting you guys go out and participate because they need you at home. So if you bring those stats back to those guys, or you invite the commanders to come out and see what you do during participation, it doesn't have to be during DV Day. They can come out and see what you guys are doing. So it's also up to us to sell that program back to the commanders, and so that they know it's beneficial, and that continues to allow you guys to continue to participate in the IRTs. So that's a big factor.
All right, that's it. Any questions? Oh, yeah. I love questions.
On the second slide, it said multinational partnerships.
You got to stop reading slides.
Yeah, knock that off. Second slide. No. Oh, whoa. Hey there. Let's see how I talk my way out of this one. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, yeah, thanks. See, that's why Chief Jones is here. We want to keep him around for a while. So we've had the pleasure of having like Canadian forces come down and train with us. Of course, there's limitations to all of that. You know, the community needs to sign off on it. They're good with it. And then, of course, like if it's medical, they're not going to be seeing patients or treating patients because that's a whole nother level. But we've also had state partnership program out of the Air and Army Guard interested in the program. And from that, again, there's a lot of limitations within it, but again, we're always trying to attract new partners. So they like to at least come and observe sometimes. So for instance, you know, I'm trying to remember which country it was that partnered over with Ohio. So they wanted to come in and just observe how we do a local mission in Ohio. So as long as the community approves and it's not going to be a deterrent to patients, right, because we've got to consider that it could be a deterrent, then they're allowed to come in and just at least observe what we're doing. So that's what that partnership piece is. That was a really good question. Delete that. No, I'm just kidding. Who made these slides? Oh, wait, that was me. Okay. Actually, Major DeVoe, that was probably you. I feel like that box was yours.
He snuck in and did it. He changed it last night.
Any other questions? We've got a couple days, so I'm sure we'll have plenty of opportunity to answer more questions. We're just going to do another 10-minute break, and then we're going to go into communications and messaging.
Also, remember that if you do have something, write it on the cards, hand it in, and
oh yeah, we'll definitely address them if you don't want to ask the group. But usually those questions are good.